Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. I'm Ashley Graham, Strategic Accounts Manager at SourceMap, and I'm really excited about this session because we've got some incredible panelists here, and they'll be sharing what it means to make the business case for traceability for an organization. So audience, put your questions in the Q&A box below, and we'll make sure to get to some of them towards the end of the session. I'm going to go around quickly and just introduce each of our panelists. First, we have David Williams, Corporate Social Responsibility Manager for Williams-Sonoma. Good morning, David.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Kelsey Halling, Head of Partnerships at the First Mile. Welcome.
Thanks. Very excited to be here.
Nathan Chan, Sustainability Manager at TerViva.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And then finally, Mackenzie Murtagh, Sustainability Manager at Beautycounter.
Hi, everyone. So excited for this conversation.
Awesome. I want to kick us off by acknowledging that we have such a broad range of companies and organizations represented here. We have cosmetics, home goods, recycled products, Pongamia. I'd love to give the audience a sense of how the concept of traceability is similar or different between your industries. I thought we could do that by having each of you give a go at defining traceability in your industry. Perhaps maybe Mackenzie, would you mind leading us into that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I work at Beautycounter, and we're a clean beauty company based in Santa Monica, California. And so in the beauty industry, having traceability is direct visibility into our raw materials and packaging supply chains, and transparency on, about where and how those ingredients and materials are being sourced. And so specifically at Beautycounter, our responsible sourcing program focuses on 3 high-risk ingredients: mica, vanilla, and palm oil. And while these ingredients are safe for human health, they have some not so safe supply chains, whether that pertains to environmental or human rights issues. And so it's really important for us to not just create safe products that are safe for human health and the environment, but also really look into the people up and down the supply chains that bring our products to life.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Both the heartbeats and the environment are important when we talk about sustainability. Kelsey, maybe you could go next.
Yeah, I would love to. And Mackenzie, that was actually a really perfect introduction for what we focus on at First Mile. So I think, everybody claims that transparency is important and that it's something they want. Sometimes the things that you learn when you get a completely transparent supply chain, like Mackenzie was just mentioning, are not the best things. And so what we help to do is help brands to map, assess, and make recommendations to improve the human rights that are happening within their raw material sourcing. We really got our start in informal waste collection and recycled materials, and ensuring that there is not just sustainable impact and an environmental impact, but that these jobs in waste collection are being done safely and with dignity, and that we can drive the human element and social impact to them as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Kelsey. We had a member of your team present at a SourceMap All Hands this summer, and we were really inspired by the mission. Thanks for being here today. How about Nathan? How about you go next? Defining traceability.
Yeah, sure. So TerViva is for those who don't know, is a company that's trying to commercialize basically new food ingredients from the Pongamia tree, which is the tree you can see behind me, which is native to India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. So we're really a food and ag company. I think for us, traceability is really a tool to help connect consumers to the farmers that actually grow their food, and as a way for us to kind of communicate impacts both on the environmental scale, whether that be around sort of carbon intensity or best practices to promote biodiversity, or to kind of the farmer livelihoods that are being affected by the products that they're choosing. And I think it's especially important for us as a novel crop to have that kind of traceable, transparent supply chain from the very beginning, because it's a novel crop, no one's heard of it, and they're going to be curious about what it is. So it helps us kind of establish a level of trust and understanding with the consumer and customer.
Great, thanks for sharing. I'm sure the Google of Pongamia just shot through the roof from all the folks that are on this panel right now in the audience. David, why don't you bring us home defining traceability in the home goods industry?
Well, everyone's already covered so many of the aspects of traceability, but I'm David Williams, Sustainability Manager at Williams-Sonoma, Inc. As many of you know, we are a US-based home goods retailer with a family of brands, including Williams-Sonoma, Pottery Barn Kids, West Elm, Rejuvenation, Mark and Graham. And I define traceability similarly as a way to track raw materials and throughout the supply chain at each stage of the manufacturing for a product and packaging. As a home goods retailer, raw materials obviously make up a significant portion of our environmental footprint. Traceability, I think, is becoming a business imperative rather than just a nice to have. More and more customers want to know where their materials come from, who's making the products. And as we set more and more ambitious goals as a company, we really need to have more and more detailed data about how the materials are made, who's making it, where they come from. Also, the US and other countries have legislation that require companies to establish good due diligence processes to ensure that materials don't come from harmful or illegal or controversial sources. So it's becoming much more of a, again, business imperative.
Okay, thanks for your insights. I think I want to move into a little bit more context setting for folks. And starting with Kelsey, I'd love to have you share with folks on the line about how First Mile came to be, and really how waste collection plays a role in traceability and sustainability more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure that most of the folks listening here have some sense of recycling in their area, and at least for those of us on the panel that are US based, I imagine most of you put your recycled materials out once a week or once every other week, depending on your municipality. And then it gets picked up and it goes away, and you assume something good happens to it. You hope something good happens to it. And that's kind of the end of your relationship with that material. But in many parts of the world, that type of infrastructure doesn't exist. There isn't a municipal system. There isn't someone coming around to pick up maybe not even your household trash, let alone a separated out, recycled material. And what that means is that these communities and neighborhoods then have to manage their own waste. And so imagine for just a second that your garbage truck stops coming, your recycling is no longer separated. How long before you start burning or burying waste in your yard to deal with it? Or how long before you and your neighbors decide, okay, this is the corner or the area of our neighborhood where we're going to put the trash because it has to go somewhere. And in a lot of these places, there is a safety element or required use for single-use packaging as well, to ensure safety around food and water and other things like that. So it's not just an option to get a reusable water bottle and fill that up. So recycling and waste infrastructure looks really different around the world, depending on where you are. But what's exciting is a lot of these materials have value to them and can be reused and sold for money, which is great, not only to keep that out of landfill, keep it out of the ocean, keep it from being burned and releasing gas into the air. And so if we can put a market value, to this material, how can we create jobs and employment opportunities and encourage waste management in places where that might not exist yet? So we really got our start. Our CEO, Ian Rosenberger, went to Haiti following the 2010 earthquake to do relief work. And one of the things he wrote in his journal was, if Haiti could turn trash into money equals good, because he saw this abundance of a resource that just wasn't being utilized in the way that we know it could. And so that really became our mission, is how to drive dignified employment through making this a valuable export and not just seen as waste that's causing problems. And so that has driven a lot of the work that we do, and we have established supply chains now that we are actively monitoring and partnering with brands that range from HP to Puma to use this responsible material in their products in Haiti, Honduras, and Taiwan right now. And then we are in the process of expanding and going all over the world with other brands to help them map, assess, and better understand what their recycled material or other raw materials, what those supply chains look like. And really focusing on human-powered and within the first mile, hence our name, of the supply chain. So, understanding what issues are there and how we can help them. And from the business side of things, what we found is that when you invest in the human rights of your raw material sourcing, you start to see improvements in the yields and quantity of that material that's available, as well as the quality of that material. So there is a direct business performance case for this work as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And building the business case of sustainability or for traceability is a little bit easier when there's value creation as part of the way that you're working. So thanks so much for sharing. I'd love to take us to David now. If you would take us a little bit more in depth with your role at Williams-Sonoma and share what types of sustainability and traceability projects or initiatives at WSI that you're working on now and that you're most proud of.
That's great. Yes, I am sustainability manager. I've been with the company for 13 years. And our sustainability department is actually embedded in the sourcing organization, but we support corporate level initiatives as well as all our brands. So we're a service organization within the company. When I started, we were really focused specifically on product sustainability, almost exclusively. We focus on wood and cotton. We actually have goals around wood and cotton specifically for our company. Actually due this year, 50% responsibly sourced wood, 100% responsibly sourced cotton by the end of this year. Very excited, we're nearing those goals. We actually achieved the wood goal already this year for 2020. So we're well on our way. But as the sustainability team has grown, we just started with two of us 13 years ago. But as we've grown and our strategy has matured, we've expanded our focus to become more holistic. Certainly, we focus on the social aspect of our products manufacturing. We've also started focusing on waste and our energy and carbon emissions. I'm most excited right now because we just launched our science-based target to reduce our carbon emissions by 2030 as a company, both for our own operations and throughout our supply chain. And what I'm most excited about actually is that everything we've done foundationally has really laddered up to this bigger goal. We now see that everything's connected, social, product environment, sustainability, traceability, it's all starting to come together. So the work we did was really foundational, focused on wood and cotton, but now that actually has a big impact on our emissions for our scope 3 emissions as a company. So I'm really proud that we're actually, as a team, improving our focus and expanding our focus. Personally, I'm also really excited about the work we've done with our social team. I'm really proud about the focus on worker well-being in the factories that make our products. We've done some amazing things with Her Health, Vision Spring, and Fair Trade. We were one of the first retailers to bring fair trade products to market. So it's incredible to see the impacts it's having on worker well-being. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things. And then also just say that the last couple of years have been really the most exciting for our company and for the industry, I think, in general. This is becoming top of mind for many companies, but especially for us internally. So yeah, it's exciting time to be in sustainability.
Definitely. Thanks, David. Some inside baseball. I was actually on David's team about 5 years ago at Williams-Sonoma. So we've known each other a long time at this point. And I remember when science-based targets were just a dream. And congratulations to you and the team for making it a reality. I'd love, Mackenzie, if you would share about, so Beautycounter has been promoting values like advocacy, traceability, transparency since its inception in 2013. How do you think that set the company apart in such a crowded beauty market?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Clean is our bread and butter. It's what we've been doing since we started, and clean ingredients is now an expectation from consumers, along with sustainable packaging, especially for our consumers. And what the beauty industry hasn't yet tackled is responsible sourcing. And we believe that this is an important differentiator for us in the market, along with our advocacy work. So we used to share a lot about, what's not in our products, XYZ ingredient and why, but now we really shifted the focus to this is what's in our products. This is where the ingredients are being sourced, because that's, what consumers want to know. And responsible sourcing and advocacy have been like the two things that other companies haven't necessarily been able to replicate. And since the very beginning, Beautycounter has set out to completely disrupt the beauty industry. That's the whole point of what we're doing and why we test and screen ingredients and why we're responsible for sourcing and sharing this message. And so it's not only important for us to just formulate with safer ingredients anymore. We want to use our business voice to really leverage the power that we have in supply chains. And we're advocating tirelessly for more health protective laws across North America.
Great, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that the advocacy work is pretty incredible. I encourage everybody to go and Google around to learn more about that as well. Nathan, I'd love to cover with you. So the agricultural technology is really interesting subset of the sustainability sector. And I'd love for you to talk the audience through TerViva's mission and then why they chose to focus on Pongamia.
Yeah, sure. So TerViva's mission is to plant millions of trees to feed billions of people. And there's a couple ideas kind of wrapped up in that mission statement. One is that agriculture is a kind of large contributor to climate change, and that we might counteract some of that by planting trees that sequester carbon. And another is that there's the idea that we need to actually use a more diverse set of crops that are more nutritious and healthier for people to kind of feed the planet and allow us to live in better balance with nature. So kind of connecting to that, why did we choose Pongamia as the crop that we might focus on? Well, I mentioned one is that it's a tree. So it sequesters carbon. It's a permanent crop. So there's less disturbance to the environment and kind of the process of growing it. It's adapted to a harsh monsoonal climate. So it's native to kind of very tough climates across India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. And we think that in some ways is more reflective of a kind of changing climate that can be more variable and extreme in the future. And another reason is that it yields quite a bit. So compared to soy, which produce protein and oil that are very similar to Pongamia, Pongamia produces 3 to 4 times more per acre. And it produces, as I said, protein and oil, which are sort of center of the plate ingredients. If you think about it, they're things that kind of contribute to a burger you might eat or something like that, which is not the case for many tree crops that are out there, which tend to be nut or fruit crops. So that's different. It means we can really scale and challenge big commodities that are out there. And overall, we believe that kind of bringing this whole system together of Pongamia allows us to kind of have an outsized impact starting at the farm level. Specifically, we believe that if we can use Pongamia, whether it's growing wild and harvesting it or cultivating it in an intense agriculture setting, we can help revitalize agricultural communities that have kind of been hurt by the way modern agriculture has treated them, or revitalize lands that have fallen out of production. And I think that second point is really important because it speaks to how we can stop deforesting kind of native habitats and ecosystems that release a lot of carbon and obviously have big impacts on wildlife and communities around them, and use and regenerate the land that we've already kind of set aside for agriculture in the world.
Fascinating. I'm really excited to have you here and to be sharing the word about Pongamia to all of the attendees. I'd love to switch gears a little bit and talk about building the business case for traceability inside of your organizations. So my first question would be directed to David. A lot of companies and folks that are potentially listening right now on the line might find it difficult to justify investing in traceability. How would you suggest that employees gain executive buy-in for such large scale and mission-driven projects like the ones that you folks have focused on at WSI?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Traceability is hard. It is a huge commitment, and it doesn't just require time and people and resources, but it requires a view of the long game. Really, it's a long-term commitment that companies need to invest in. And it's not an easy sell to the C-suite. Honestly, I think it's taken time to socialize the concept. And for us, that was a hard nut to crack. But it is, again, becoming a business imperative, even beyond sustainability of the products and the materials and the supply chain. Investors are expecting that companies they invest in are mitigating their risks. And obviously, there are risks in material supply chains. So that is certainly one aspect investors or C-suite really pays attention to, is the risk mitigation and investor needs. But even beyond investors, the other investors in our company are our customers, and customers are more and more asking, where are their materials coming from? Who's making them? Are they safe? And we need to be able to respond to that in a credible way. And I think that it's those two are really good aspects to bring to the C-suite's attention. But I think it's also important to put together a plan, have a plan in place, develop a strategy to really be able to sell it. And it's something that it's important to explore. What does traceability mean? It's not something you do overnight. You need to understand what resources you need in place. That means additional headcount, systems, educate yourself and your internal staff. But again, I think it is becoming the imperative of business to invest in this. More and more, it's becoming investors are asking for it, so it becomes a little bit easier to sell to the C-suite. But I do think it's important to start small, really identify a core material or two, and really focus on building the business plan around it. Be clear about what data you're looking for. Make sure you understand what you're going to ask for and how you're going to use it. It's very frustrating to the suppliers to get those data requests and never know how it's going to be utilized, or if it even gets used. So it's important to make sure that you engage your supply chain for sure. They're a key stakeholder in this plan. But it's also just important to be consistent and have this long-term view that it's not just one-time request. It's going to be an ongoing process that you need to embed in all of your systems and your business processes. So I think it's becoming more and more executives are aware that this is coming. Investors are asking for it. Customers are asking for it. So I think it's starting to sell itself, but it's important that you understand the implications before you embark.
Definitely. Thanks for your insight. I'm glad you mentioned some of the external stakeholders as well, like the folks in your supply chain that you're engaging to get data and information. And we'll dive into that a little bit later in this talk. Mackenzie, for you, I was wondering if you could share with us some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that Beautycounter has encountered as you've pursued traceability in your supply chain. It seems like buy-in at an executive level is something that may not be as big of a issue, given that it was sort of built within the organization. But I'm wondering, what other issues have you come up with and how have you addressed those?
Yeah, I really enjoyed David's response. And I think that thankfully our CEO has been really bought in to traceability since the beginning. And our investors as well are also, this is an important area for us to work on for a business. So we feel the support there. I would say the biggest challenge has been the lack of transparency from our raw material suppliers. And this happens when we begin to ask those tough questions and peel back the layers. And more often than not, these are really complex supply chains where ingredients are coming from, and suppliers don't always necessarily know exactly where the ingredients are coming from. So for us, that's probably the biggest issue. And then I would say we've also been met with some hesitance or resistance from some suppliers to really roll up their sleeves and do this work. And whether that's because of the investment, there's like costs involved, or the time that it takes. David mentioned it's not something that happens overnight. This is a commitment. Or just there's some suppliers that are afraid of what they might find within these supply chains. And so we really want to help our suppliers address these issues and then find ways to increase transparency and traceability in these complex supply chains.
Yep, that's a topic that we talk about a lot at SourceMap, since we're engaging downstream in most of the projects that we're executing on behalf of our clients. So I definitely understand that. Nathan, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you folks approach gaining buy-in from your external stakeholders, like the farmers and food manufacturers that you're engaging. I imagine you're having to convince them at least to make the swap to a traceable product like Pongamia. So I'd love if you could talk us through that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the food manufacturing and CPG side, we generally are kind of working with a more progressive set of companies and partners who actually kind of tend to be the ones to start that conversation. I would say we don't lead with traceability to like get our foot in the door with, a Unilever, a Nestle, or someone like that. It's always going to be taste and functionality of the ingredient. That's number one for them, but sustainability is definitely a close second. But a lot of the times we actually don't need to make that business case. Interestingly, it's something that to kind of what David's saying, it's something that their investors and their executives are looking at and understanding that they need to kind of address. I think it's a way that they look to mitigate risk within their supply chains, whether it be from product quality issues or social and environmental issues. One example of that is we've been talking with a potential customer who is really excited about the potential of swapping Pongamia, or Panova oil as we call it, in for avocado oil, because avocado oil is actually a pretty tough supply chain for their product. And there's kind of a couple big issues there. One is product quality. So they're facing issues with sort of adulteration in avocado oil. And then the other issue is kind of an ethical, social issue around the influence and kind of presence of drug cartels in the avocado trade, which is sort of bizarre and interesting. And so they're just trying to get off of it completely, despite the fact that it's a healthy and tasty product. And I think in general, consumers are looking for just a lot more transparency on where their products are coming from, especially if it's a more premium product. And on the farming side, I think for us, the way we approach it with farming is it kind of goes back to the food manufacturing side in a way, which is the case we make to our farmers is, hey, if you can make this traceable, if you can follow the practices we're asking you to, we can in turn pay you more. Basically, you're going to get a premium for growing it in this way. And that's generally enough for them. They're excited about it. We're generally working in places where they've tried other crops that have failed. And so the idea that this crop works there and they can get a premium for growing it more sustainably and traceably is enough. So that's kind of how it works for us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Again, creating value makes a business case easy. Kelsey, I'd like to switch to you. You mentioned earlier that First Mile partners with some really exciting companies like HP and Puma. What are some of the ways that traceability benefits these businesses that are sourcing your recycled materials? How have you seen that come to life?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that, the investment in human rights can directly correlate to increase in available material and the quality of that material, which is obviously paramount to any company that's sourcing raw material for their products. I think that it, allows brands to tell a much richer and deeper story around the impact that they're having. We have a unique partnership in that we have a nonprofit partner work as well that implements much of the social impact programming that we do on the ground. So this also, offers the opportunity for some of our brand clients to strategically align their philanthropic giving directly with their supply chains and their products. And we see just a huge benefit, not only in the storytelling and kind of, brand awareness and customer response to that, but also from an employee engagement standpoint. And so, employees feel really good when they can see the company that they're working for really walking the walk in that way, and investing and making those changes in the supply chains that they're directly involved with. So tying it back to the direct product and business model, I think is really important from a talent and retention standpoint as well.
I would love to stick with you for a moment and try to understand some of the challenges of achieving traceability in the informal system that is waste collection in a lot of, I imagine that there's challenges aplenty, and I would love to just understand a little bit more about that. And also just to invite folks to put questions in the Q&A box below. We have a couple minutes at the end to go through those questions. So if you have something burning, please type it in. But Kenzie, back to you.
Yeah, so the challenges in informal waste collection, where to begin? I think, one of the most challenging things is it's a very transient population, and it's not limited to one geographic area. And so, a lot of companies rely on audits and certifications to ensure that their supply chains are doing what they hope and expect and are operating to their standards. And that works really well when you're talking about facilities and places with clear boundaries and walls and where people are employed. And all of that can be checked and improved and, relied on. When you get, beyond the facility into informal sourcing of any kind, but especially then with waste collection, you're talking about people that are sourcing from landfills, people that are sourcing from informal dump sites, people that are doing household collection, sourcing from streets. And so that all looks really, really different. And it's really difficult to send an auditor or a third party, to those locations and say, check to make sure this is all okay. And so, a big difference that we're able to offer is that the programming that we put into place requires us having teams on the ground that interact with these communities on a daily basis. We're able to track improvement over time. We don't claim that, everything is perfect and there's no more work to do. There is plenty of work to do, but we're really proud of the progress that has been made and that the transformation that we're able to see amongst the community. Everything we do is also very much driven by waste collectors. So we're never prescriptive. We don't come in and say, this is what you need. This is clearly what are the biggest challenges facing the community. We spend a lot of time doing, data gathering and sitting with folks and understanding, what the challenges are that they're facing, how they prioritize those, and how we can then, help them and work locally with other partners and resources to make sure that we're addressing those issues.
Challenges aplenty, but it sounds like you folks have figured out a good working model in some of these contexts, which is wonderful.
Yeah, we like to tell our brand partners that we can help them turn their supply chain liabilities into leadership opportunities.
I love that. I'm going to write that one down. That's incredible. I'm going to go to an audience question. And so this can be open. So if you folks want to just jump in, the question is, which stakeholder should finance the efforts that suppliers will take to increase traceability? Are the suppliers entirely on the hook? Should the brands kick in? Will the cost be passed on to consumers? Does anyone have a thought about that?
I'll jump in. I do think it's often a shared responsibility. We tend to pay for the requirements or for survey and data collection currently with our supply chain. It is outside of many of their expertise, and we're bringing tools to bear that we think are necessary that do have a cost. So we've been paying for that. But I do think that there is value in having suppliers have a stake in the game as well. There is a ownership, accountability that comes with actually paying for the service to provide that data. And I do think that the data is becoming more and more valuable. I think it does differentiate a supplier who can share that information and traceability with their clients, with their customers. So that is becoming something of a differentiator. So I think it traditionally, from our sense, it started as a retailer pays for that, but I think it could be distributed a little more evenly as it becomes more needed, more necessary to do business.
I'd agree with David. Just in the beauty industry, when we first started, a lot of the work we were doing on the safety front was pretty novel to Beautycounter, and it was hard to find suppliers that either could work with us or were willing to make the changes that we were requiring to work with us. And I think we're seeing the same on the traceability front. But what we've seen is the suppliers that have stuck with us and our contract manufacturers who have been willing to work with us and, roll up their sleeves, they are able to offer this service to other brands, whether or not those brands, this was baked into their ethos from the beginning, like Beautycounter, or it's something that they're getting into because of the demand from the consumer. And there we're seeing shared costs because this is a service that they can offer to consumers and brands other than Beautycounter. And for us, that's a big win and an exciting moment because it's not just, we don't just want Beautycounter products out for people to buy. We want safer products, and whether that's ours or someone else's.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme, at least what I've seen through my years in the sustainability team at different brands and different organizations. Is usually the brands will front the upfront cost to get things moving, but really scale, there needs to be a certain level of ownership across the different tiers of the supply chain. Any additional comments on that topic? Awesome. Well, I'd love to do one more round robin with you guys. And what I would love to share with our audience is what's next on the horizon for each of your organizations. What are you most excited about? What can we look forward to? Maybe we'll go the same way around. So Mackenzie, if you could lead us in.
Yeah. Well, I've loved, hearing what everyone else has going on in their industries, and especially in the beauty industry, there's really some exciting things. And our sustainability program focuses on 3 main areas. So responsible sourcing, sustainable packaging, and then climate action. And I think I'm equally as energized by all 3 of those areas that I get to work on. So number one, I'm excited by what I'm seeing in the beauty industry, where more and more companies are starting to design for circularity, specifically because of consumer demand. So excited to see where that goes as more innovation in the packaging industry comes to market. Secondly, for us, in regards to responsible sourcing, I'm excited to see our work that we're doing on mica continue to evolve, and really the work that's being done with the suppliers that are willing to invest in traceability and work with us has been really energizing. So excited on that front. And then lastly, climate. I'm excited to see Beautycounter really roll up our sleeves. We have a carbon neutral goal by 2030. And, you know, if you asked us today how we were going to get there, I don't have the answers, but I know that we have the commitment. And so I'm excited to see where we can go in the next few years to really chart a solid path forward. So 3 main things I would say, but excited about everything. It's challenging work, but I think we've all shared the sentiment that it's impactful and it's what gets us up in the morning, and it's making a difference.
Great, thanks for sharing, Mackenzie. Vitamin C serum to carbon neutral. I'm so excited about that commitment. Kelsey, maybe you could hop in and let us know what's next for the First Mile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned, that this year we were traveling to a number of new supply chains for us, doing this initial mapping and assessing. So by the end of the year or beginning of next, depending on COVID travel restrictions, we'll have been to at least 9 new waste sheds all around the world. So Southeast Asia, Africa, LATAM, and here in the US as well, which has been really exciting. And hopefully now that we have the data needed and some better insight into what's happening, the real work can start, the implementation phases of some of these projects, which will be really exciting. We're starting to see more and more brands make really bold commitments around recycled material usage or traceability within their raw material sourcing. And so we just see, there just being a ton of opportunity as more and more companies are going to new sourcing options, or just better understanding that there are these risks involved at the raw material level that we could be helpful to them in terms of providing. So yeah, lots of growth and lots of expansion coming, and that will, bring more and more impact to the space as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. There's no shortage of waste around the world, so you could
Definitely
theoretically expand to every country.
Yeah.
Nathan, maybe we could hop over to you, and I'm going to try to turn my light back on. I don't know if you guys saw, but it went a little dark. That's good for the environment. But Nathan, if you could share what's next for TerViva.
Yeah, sure. So we're excited that next year in 2022, we're going to basically launch our first product, our first Pongamia based ingredient into the market, which we're calling Ponova oil. And we'll be doing that mainly through partnerships with CPG firms, big and small, and a variety of products like a plant-based creamer or a sauce or dressing, and also just as a good old regular vegetable oil that you could cook with. And then sort of in the following years, we'll be looking to sell also Ponova flour and protein, which will be sort of high protein ingredients. But to support that work, in my role, I'm excited to help scale our supply chains and our traceability programs, especially in India, where we operate a wild harvest supply chain of Pongamia. And I think, what's exciting about that is it gives me the opportunity to do a lot of education with customers, use that traceability system to kind of draw through what our impacts are and also tell the story of Pongamia, which I've tried to do here, but it's a long story. It's a little bit complicated. So excited to kind of use it as a communication tool to really show people that there are sustainable alternatives out there, that they're new, that they're not scary, and that they can be really kind of tasty, functional, and also affordable.
Well, so exciting, finally coming to market. I think that's a perfect segue to Williams-Sonoma. We have to hook Nathan up with some of the buyers over there, David. We'll have to make that happen.
I'm excited. Yeah, I want to learn more about that.
David, would you share with us what's on the horizon for you?
I think, well, I mentioned we have a set of public goals for 2021. And as we're nearing the end of 2021, our next big goals are really on the horizon. I mentioned we set a science-based target for ourselves. It's public. And reducing our emissions by 2030 is going to be a massive challenge. but I'm excited because it covers so many areas of the business. It's just, it's a real time for transformation and innovation for the company. Thinking about new ways we can adjust our business. I mean, are we going to be a traditional brick and mortar retailer? We're going to do more online business. How do we adapt to circularity? We're really having all these questions internally and really exploring those ideas, and not just business models, but the materials themselves, looking at alternative materials that have a lower environmental impact. Those are certainly things that we're exploring. Mackenzie, you mentioned you don't have a clear pathway to 2030 for your carbon neutrality goal, and absolutely there are gaps that we have to fill, but I'm excited because there's so much innovation happening in this space right now. It really is changing the way we're thinking about business in general. So I'm excited about how setting a target for ourselves has inspired so much energy in the company, but also just brilliant ideas, engagement within our own associate network, and our suppliers. So I'm excited about that synergy. And it really comes down to this new place that we're all in, focused on a lower carbon economy. So there's a lot happening. I don't want to boil the ocean, but it's really shaking things up in a really inspiring way.
Great. Thanks, David. Well, with that, I want to thank you each, Mackenzie, Kelsey, Nathan, David, for joining me today with this conversation, and have a wonderful day. And everybody, we'll see you at the next session.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks so much.